The GM J-Car platform launched in 1982 and comprising the Chevrolet Cavalier, Pontiac J2000, later the 2000 Sunbird, Oldsmobile Firenza, Buick Skyhawk, and yes, even the Cadillac Cimarron, spawned some of the most recognizable cars of the 1980s. The platform represented GM's first compact car entry into the front-wheel drive space and was another early example of a so-called world car, with GM selling J-Car variants like the Opel Ascona, as well as the Vauxhall Cavalier in Europe and the Holden Chimera in Australia. There was even an Isuzu variant, the Florian, sold in Japan. The car was originally designed to be sold in the U.S. as a Chevrolet and Pontiac model. Olds and Buick were later added, and a Cadillac variant was also added once it was determined that the upcoming Cimarron could not be produced on the X-Car platform due to production constraints. All models launched for the 1982 model year. Under hood for the 1982 model year, all J-Cars used the same engine, a 1.8-liter overhead valve pushrod engine making 88 horsepower. The viewer should not confuse this engine with a later GM Brazil-sourced 1.8-liter overhead cam engine, which arrived for the 1983 model year in some J-Car variants, including the Pontiac 2000, Olds Firenza, and Buick Skyhawk. It was not available in the Cavalier or Cimarron. The 1.8-liter overhead valve engine, which later spawned a much improved 2-liter variant and a 2.2-liter variant as well, was specifically designed for the front-wheel drive J-Car and was also one of its least desirable features. It was particularly gutless when paired with an automatic transmission, surprisingly crude for such a small cylinder engine with harsh and unrefined tones being emitted from the engine itself, and had a number of reliability issues that plagued it. In fact, the engine was so unloved that after just 1 year it was replaced by either the previously mentioned 1.8-liter overhead cam engine from Brazil or the larger 2-liter engine in all J-Cars. Let's explore more about this 1.8-liter engine that made its way into the J-Car and other options GM was considering at the time to power its new lineup of compact front-wheel drive vehicles, as well as what made this 1.8-liter engine so problematic. At the time the J-Car was being developed, GM was considering 3 different options to power its new compact lineup of vehicles: an overhead valve inline 4-cylinder engine, an overhead cam inline 4-cylinder engine similar to the 1.6-liter overhead cam engine in the Chevette, and a 60-degree V4 engine. Yes, you heard that right. GM was originally considering a 60-degree V4 engine for use in the J-Car. This engine would have been based on the Chevrolet 2.8-liter 60-degree V6 that was launched in GM's X-Cars and would have effectively had that V6's number 1 and 2 cylinders eliminated. The V4 presented the shortest engine length, but it was also the widest. Moreover, because of the V4's design and its width, engineers could not package accessories like the alternator, air conditioning, and power steering pump in parallel with the engine. They had to stick out proud of the engine itself, which was not desirable from a packaging standpoint. The V-shaped engine with its 2 banks of exhaust manifolds also proved a bit more challenging to tune than inline variants. The overhead cam 4-cylinder was also not viewed as a desirable choice because, given packaging constraints, the overhead cam belt drive would have reduced the distance between engine bore centers, creating a lack of an ability to increase the engine's displacement further. The overhead valve i4 engine was thus selected as accessories could be packaged in a tighter space than the V4, and it offered greater displacement flexibility than the overhead cam engine. Lastly, and also importantly, it was cheaper than the other variants. Once the overhead 4-cylinder configuration was selected, engineers had to determine the appropriate displacement to achieve their desired performance and fuel economy goals. And herein lies one of the first issues that the 1.8-liter overhead valve engine faced in its development. The overall stated objective for quote-unquote performance for the J-Cars was to achieve 0 to 60 miles an hour in 16 seconds with an automatic transmission and 14 seconds with a manual transmission, with combined EPA fuel economy of 29 miles per gallon. Yes, I said that correctly. The objective set forth for these vehicles was a 0 to 60 time of 16 seconds if the customer selected an automatic transmission. This almost certainly ensured that any customer who was trading down from a previous V8-powered automobile would be most disappointed with this new power plant under hood. Additionally, despite the 1.8 liter's relatively small size, it was found to be a quite buzzy engine in a number of ways. Early testing revealed that the alternator bracket had to be redesigned with a rear support, as the alternator itself would further exacerbate the engine's inherent vibrations, which would then be felt through the floor pan and in the cabin. Also, the 1.8 liter engine was plagued by engine roughness throughout its testing period. Engineers traced this noise, which they admitted resembled connecting rod bearing wrap, back to various combustion parameters, particularly in the 2,000 to 3,000 RPM range. This noise was attenuated by reducing main bearing clearance as well as spark advance within the 2,000 to 3,000 RPM range. Suffice it to say, the solution only partially worked. In addition to these issues, the 1.8 liter engine was also rather buzzy and didn't like to rev, in large part because the connecting rod caps were designed to be oversized. They were oversized so that they could later be machined in order that the 4 connecting rods as part of a matched set would have similar weights. This was a different approach from what the Japanese used, where a series of connecting rods were simply matched based on weight and not machined. That extra step was not taken, and consequently, the extra heavy connecting rod cap wasn't needed. By making the connecting rod cap heavier than normal, it caused the engine not to be able to rev all that freely at the upper RPM rev range, and also made it a bit more buzzy and have internal shake forces. I suppose that's a bit of what can be expected from what really was a parts bin engine, as the 1.8 liter overhead valve 4-cylinder used a number of components from the Chevrolet 60-degree 2.8 liter V6. Among other things, these included the pistons, the piston pins and ring assemblies, as well as some valve train components like the rocker arms, rocker arm ball stud and nut, valve springs, and lifters. It all combined together to form a parts bin engine that, while it did have, admittedly for this period of time, relatively high horsepower per liter, it just didn't have the oomph that buyers were expecting even in this price class. As I previously mentioned, after just 1 year, it was upgraded to either the 2-liter overhead valve 4-cylinder engine, which was a derivative of this 1.8, and much improved, or the 1.8 liter overhead cam engine that was sourced from GM do Brazil for use in these J cars. Let's close out with this video from a dealer demonstration disc highlighting some of the features of the 1982 Cavalier and introducing it to the dealer body.
The 1982 Chevrolet Cavalier, America's complete car from A to Z, has arrived in a style to match your own. The sophisticated 4-door sedan, the ideal family car for the 80s. The contemporary 2-door coupe, the latest in 2-door styling. The 4-door station wagon, as handsome as it is practical. And for those who take to the road with enthusiasm, the sporty, versatile 2-door hatchback. The 1982 Cavaliers, a whole new family of quality-built, 4-passenger, 4-cylinder, fuel-efficient front-wheel drive cars from Chevrolet.